stop, and then they restart it, and it would stop, and they restart it and stop. And it was fueled by liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. In order to make this work, you had to know the physics of how liquids, operate in space. They just don't flow to the back of the rocket there to fire. You had to have a way of manipulating the liquids. So how do you build a facility where you can replicate no gravity? You build something called the Zero Gravity Research Facility. And this is what it looks like. What it is a building and it extends down 500 feet. And you take your test section, you put it at the bottom here, whatever you're testing. It's a pod, it's about 2 or 3 feet in diameter, and you fire it, and it goes all the way up to the top. And by the time it gets to the top, it sort of hovers for 2 or 3 seconds. And during that time, while it's hovering, there is no gravity. Then it falls back down again. So this is the facility that they use to work out the problem of using liquids, the physics of liquids, and zero gravity. We made that a landmark. As far as I know, that one's still around. Okay. Rocket engine test facility. This is where they tested hydrogen. Liquid hydrogen was a very powerful fuel, but a very deadly fuel. So they had to build special facilities to test it where it wouldn't blow up. Here's the test cell engine. Okay, so I'm just working right along there. I got my wind tunnels. I got my rocket engine test facilities. Then the engine test stands. Once you get the engine test facility, you get it together and you build an engine, you got to test it. So the first one we did was the Redstone test stand. This is where they developed the Jupiter C rockets under von Braun. And this was built actually in it says 1961. That's the time the picture was taken. It was built in the 1950s. And the amazing thing was that wherever von Braun was, he was building these facilities that were really intended for space travel. He had no money to do it, but he just managed to construct them. So this was where they tested the Redstone rocket. All right, that was easy. That became a landmark. That was no problem. Then they began to get a little bigger. Here's one in 1966 that they used to test the Saturn 1 rocket, and developed 1 million pounds of thrust. And here you see a Saturn 1 rocket in there. That's a test stand. There's another test stand over here. Here's the concrete buffer between. That goes down about 50 feet into the ground. So you would take the whole rocket and you fire it. Before NASA would fire one of these large rockets to go into space, they would test them, full-scale flight in one of these facilities. So the propulsion and structural test facility. And this is still being used today. Great value for the money. And here's another one, the propulsion test facility. I believe this one is in Louisiana, yes. This is where they tested the Saturn V and they tested the space shuttle engines here. Here you see Saturn rocket, full-scale Saturn rocket being lifted into the test stand. All right. So what I'm saying is you know about all these rockets to go into space. You know about the rockets to go to the moon and whatever, but they're built here on Earth. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for the sites where they were built, the sites where they were testing. Okay, so I just worked my way through the NASA inventory here. We had wind tunnels, engine development, engine test stands, rocket test stands. Oh, I love this one. This is the dynamic test stand, the Marshall Space Flight Center, 500 feet high. What they would do is they would take a Saturn V rocket, they would put it in here, and they'd shake the living blueberries out of it. Why? Because when you launch a Saturn V rocket, it's going to shake. And they wanted to make sure that nothing was going to come loose. So they'd have to shake it. It's called a shaker stand. Now, the NASA guys had a very funny sense of humor. They would take you to the top of this place in an elevator. You'd walk off and you walk across the top of it at a wire mesh roof that you could look through. And you could look down 500 feet. But they wouldn't tell you it had a wire mesh roof. You walk out and all of a sudden it seemed like you were standing 500 feet in midair. They used to like to see how people would react. Well, it didn't bother me. I mean, I just walked off and I said, oh, well, that's interesting. About 3 or 4 weeks before, they brought somebody up there. And they walked the guy out of the elevator. He got onto the wire mesh roof and he freaked out. He grabbed hold of the railing and he wouldn't let go. I think they had to come up with a crowbar and pry him loose. But this is something that's still in use today. You know, you take rockets that are going to fly into space. They're not all as big as the Saturn rocket, but you shake them there. And then in terms of rockets, I designated one rocket, and this is the one in Huntsville, Alabama, because there are 3 Saturn V rockets still in existence today. This was the one with the highest degree of integrity. Everything that's on that rocket today in Huntsville, Alabama, was on that rocket when it flew into space. It was a flight-ready vehicle, and they just turned it over as an exhibition. So it made that a national historic landmark. Got into a tremendous fight with the Smithsonian over that. The Smithsonian said, no, it's an object. You can't designate objects. Why? Well, when the National Register was conceived and this whole business started, Murtaugh from the National Register met with the head of the Smithsonian at the Cosmos Club. And they shook hands. They said the Park Service wouldn't touch any of the artifacts in the Smithsonian collection. And I looked at the people from the Smithsonian and said, oh, who's Murtaugh? I knew who Murtaugh was. But I wasn't going to just listen to them. So Murtaugh shook hands with someone from the Smithsonian, the Cosmos Club. Yeah, it wasn't going to stop me. So I went ahead and recommended its designation, and it actually became a national historic landmark. Incidentally, Murtaugh just died about a week ago. He was 95. But one thing I found out that the Smithsonian didn't want known was that a lot of their artifacts are fakes. Am I shocking you?
Yes.
You go to the Smithsonian and you see their models of the Redstone. You see their models of the V-2 rocket. You see their airplanes. A lot of them are fakes. They're not the real thing. Or if the real thing, like the Bell X-1, that was pioneered by the first plane to fly faster than the speed of sound. The engine and all the instrumentation is gone. That was because after the program was over, NACA came back and they were taking parts off of it. NASA does this today when they turn over artifacts to the Smithsonian. They come back from time to time and they remove artifacts, instrumentation. That means that these artifacts have less and less documentation.
Are the space capsules real?
Yeah, they're real, but a lot of the internal components are missing. You go to the, they have the capsule there for the one that went into space, the second on the Saturn rocket. The instrumentation is missing. It's they have the front panel, but everything behind it is gone. Now, NASA, their philosophy is we need some instrumentation. We know it's on X, Y, and Z vehicles over at the Smithsonian. What do they need it for? We'll leave the front panel on. So they take parts off of it, so it's less and less integrity. That's not good.
All that's documented.
No. They don't document it. They're very careless with their documentation. I would go to the various NASA centers, such as Kennedy Space Center, and I would ask about a launch pad, and, the guy would come up from the archives, and he'd give me all the drawings for the launch pad. He said, okay, you can take them. I said, what do you mean I can take them? I said, these are your original drawings. He said, no, we don't need them anymore. So they would offer me original drawings.
Well, what about trade secrets? Some Russians could come in, or any other.
Anybody could come in and take them, yes. They didn't care, because they were old programs. They weren't interested in them anymore. So NASA has lost a lot of the documentation that went into the creation of these facilities. The only way that documentation is preserved is if you preserve the facilities, and that's what I was doing. All right, now, for example, biggest flight is out of Vandenberg Air Force Base. This is West Coast. Space Launch Complex 2. I wanted to do 10. 10 was the one that was the pristine site. Air Force would not let me use 10. This battle went on for 3 or 4 years. Eventually we got Space Launch Complex 2. Air Force said that they needed these complexes that could be designated because they were going to launch the space shuttle from Vandenberg. Sure. They never launched one space shuttle from Vandenberg. Well, in any case, I couldn't get 10, so I got 2. And sometimes, they would be so fussy. I would want to do you do the whole launch pad. It's not just sand. It's the flame bucket. It's the tanks that supply the hydrogen and the oxygen. It's the blockhouse, the administration. It's like a big footprint. And the Air Force would come in and say, no, you can only do the boundary that's around the tower itself. Nothing else is included. Oh, okay. I used to think the Air Force drove me nuts, but in actuality, I found out years later, talking to some Air Force historians, I was the one that drove them nuts. They've had all sorts of meetings trying to determine how to handle it. Now, the one agency that totally cooperated, that loved me, was the United States Army. The United States Army began the American space program with the V-2 rocket. And they have a site out west called White Sands and Launch Complex 33. They were thrilled to have White Sands designated as a National Historic Landmark. Here you see a V-2 and going off of White Sands. So they were very happy. Here's the White Sands test site. That's the launch pad with the flame bucket. You can see the flame bucket coming back. They were totally happy. Because the Army feels it's gotten a raw deal. The Army feels that it's had a very great impact on the space program and nobody recognizes it, which is true. So the United States Army was totally cooperative. Okay, so we got launch pads, Apollo training facilities. How do you learn to rendezvous in space? Well, NASA had a rendezvous docking simulator. They hung off the ceiling of NASA Langley. And they would get in this thing and they would practice. So, it looked like it was crucial to the program. I made it a landmark. How do you land on the moon? Well, you have this facility, this vehicle. The astronauts would fly in this thing and they practiced landing on the moon. Neil Armstrong was flying in this 2 weeks before he landed on the moon, and he lost control. And he had to punch out, and he destroyed the vehicle, but he got down okay. So we made that a landmark. Then the one I like in NASA Langley is the Lunar Landing Research Facility. It's a big hangar, and they would hang the lunar lander off of there, and you would practice landing while hanging from wires from this Lunar Landing Research Facility. Another site that I thought was important was one that was built by the Army and turned over to NASA. How do you learn to maneuver in space? Well, you have a big tank and you put people in the tank. Learn to maneuver in space by essentially swimming in the tank, called the Neutral Buoyancy Space Simulator. This one is no longer in operation. Okay, so I'm just moving my way along here. Apollo Hardware Test Facilities. This is a good one. This is the Johnson Space Center. Before you put the the command module in space, you put it in here for 30 days, and you bake it, and you freeze it. You simulate the temperatures of space in an atmosphere or without an atmosphere, and you see how it operates. This is the Space Environmental Simulation Laboratory. In other words, in order to go into space, you have to test and test and test and retest all these vehicles. In order to do that, you have to build facilities to test all these vehicles. Now here's one for unmanned testing. This is good. This is at Goddard. It's a magnetic test facility. What the hell is a magnetic test facility? Well, when you put a satellite into space and it circles the Earth, its orbit is going to be determined by the magnetism of the Earth. It has to have, magnetism that'll cancel out the magnetism of the Earth. Well, how do you know what to do? How do you know what that magnetism is going to be? Well, you put it in something called the magnetic test facility. So when you launch it, the magnetic attraction of the Earth does not disturb the orbit. Don't ask me how this works. I have no idea how it works. It's an old 25-foot space simulator. This was designed for the unmanned program, and they would put, vehicles in here, and they would, test them for 30 days in the environment of space. So Pioneers 10 and 11 would go through here. One of the reasons why our vehicles last so long is they've all been thoroughly tested. Well, now you had to have a tracking station. First tracking station is the Goldstone Tracking Station. This was built by the Army. It's out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. What was this something to get to? I had to drive to Barstow, California. Anybody ever been to Barstow, California? It's the ends of the earth. And then after you leave Barstow, you got to drive 60 miles down a dirt road in the Mojave Desert, and then you come to this thing. And I'm driving the 60-mile road, and I come across a bunch of Army vehicles, 2.5-ton trucks and tanks, and they flag me down, and they look at me, and they say, "Have you seen the terrorists?" I'll wrap it up. Okay. Have you seen the terrorists? What terrorists? No. Okay, so I go on. 10 miles down the road, I see a bunch of guys in old cars and bandanas carrying AK-47s. Have you seen the Army? Oh, yeah, they're back that way, guys. All right, so I did this one. This was the Pioneer Deep Space Station. Mission Control. I did the Apollo Mission Control Center. I had a big fight over this one. But NASA's taking appreciation of this, and they're rehabbing this. And then I did the Mission Control Center for the unmanned programs. Okay, then I had other support for the Rogers Dry Lake. Already talked about the Rogers Dry Lake. And then, I wanted to do spacecraft. That was phase 2. But I ran into the Smithsonian, so I could document them, but we couldn't make them landmarks, such as Friendship 7, Gemini 4. All right. My study forms the foundation for the preservation of these resources. Nobody's ever attacked my mythology. Nobody's ever attacked the sites that I picked. I picked the correct sites. The thing that really bugs me is that I finished this study, and hold on a minute. Historians have written articles upon articles upon articles. NASA has written articles upon articles. Historians, academic historians, have written books on the preservation of space-related resources. It's all based upon my work. But nobody cites me. Nobody gives me credit for it at all. So my study really forms the foundation for the study of the American space program. So I'm pretty proud of that. Now, I must say that in the time being, NASA has come around. They've taken pride in their NHLs. They're preserving their NHLs. I always said that this was good advertisement for them. Bring people on the site, show them what they do. And they've come around now to that point of view. But it was a battle to get these sites designated. And NASA wasn't too bad. The Air Force was the worst. Terrible cooperation with the Air Force. But eventually I finished the entire set of studies. The studies were fine. I sent them off to Congress. Nothing ever happened. We never got a national park. We had hearings. I was not allowed to attend the hearing. And in terms of the observatories, I only got the minor observatories and never got the major observatories. And I think it's funny now, all the major observatories want to become National Historic Landmarks. And I'm sitting off on the side laughing. I'm saying, yeah, sure, go ahead. See if you can help yourself. All right, well, this talk will go on. I have more stories to tell. It can go on forever. But basically, over the course of about 7 or 8 years, I did 7 or 8 studies. I traveled the country. I talked to everybody who was in the space program. I visited all the sites associated with the space program. We got about 35 NHLs. Of those 35 NHLs, about 17 or 18 are still around. And I'm proud to say that I made a good selection, and that NASA and the Air Force and the Army now take pride in those NHLs and preserve them and interpret them, and they bring people on the site to see them. So I'm very proud of that. Very proud of that fact. So I did a good job. I really did. Nobody has ever faulted me ever for the mythology of my studies. All right, put the light on out.
Close your eyes.
Let me see if there's anything I left out. Anything I left out? Yes. Everything. Everything I left out. So I didn't bring all the studies that I did, but I mean, it was like every year you do another study, you do another study. This is a basic study. Oh, I know what I wanted to show you, this one here. The basic study, Park Service is cheap. To do the study, they go to print it. How many do they print? We can only afford 70 copies. What do you mean? The Air Force wants them, the private community wants them, NASA wants them, everyone wants them, but I must tell you, I'll show you one other thing. What you do is you go to Amazon. Let's type in Butowski. Butowski has reprinted all my theme studies. So you can get the Man in Space theme study. Here it is. It's been reprinted. Now it's temporarily out of stock, but you can get it for $16.97. This is another book I did, American Family World War II. This is another theme study I did on World War II warships, 2357. Great one on the U.S. Constitution. So Amazon has reprinted all my theme studies, and they're selling them. The only thing that I don't like is that I don't get any royalties. Never get any royalties. I've actually bought some of these when I've run out of my own copies, and people want to see them. But you go to Amazon, and Amazon basically has reprinted all of my theme studies. Not every one of them, but most of the theme studies. I wrote about 9 or 10 NHL theme studies, which was the most of any historian in the program. The one I'm most associated with is Man in Space. I own that topic. There's nobody who knows more about it than I do. And every article, every book, everything that's happened since the mid-1980s, they all follow the mythology that I laid out in the 1980s. All right. Haben Sie eine Frage, meine Damen und Herren? Any questions for those of you who don't speak German? I won't say it in Polish, as Mr. Neiman used to say, Polish.
Eine Frage.
I'll tell you a story. Mr. Neiman was born in the town of Chechevici. To this day, I cannot spell Chechevici. Polish names are just absolutely new to me. All right, so if you want a copy of any one of my studies, just go to Amazon and order them, and they're really cheap. And I'll tell you, they do a better job at binding the books than the Park Service did. You open up my worship study, and as soon as you open it up, it'll crack, and the pages will fall out. It's 800 pages. But Amazon has done a good job. Again, you can get my book through Amazon, $18. Although if you buy it from me, I'll sell it to you for $15. Don't tell anybody. But you can also get it on Amazon Prime for $7.99. This one I'm really proud of. It only took me 40 years to do. This is my website. I've created a website with 35,000 articles up there. It is the best private website for National Park Service material. It's better than the National Park Service has. And you think, how much money did I get from the National Park Service to do this? Nothing. How much cooperation do I get? Nothing. It's amazing. They just don't cooperate with me. I sent off an email to 80 people letting them know that I had that new upload. I hear from one or two of them. But they just don't cooperate with me. I would love to cooperate with various Park Service agencies to get material scanned and put it up, but they don't do it. So I've done it all privately.
And good luck with your health problem.
What was that?
Good luck with your health problem.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just hope somebody ahead of me scheduled for that, or number 2A. After I retired from the Park Service, I put together a website. I didn't like the Park Service website. I created my own website. It's called mpshistory.com. And I know this website is good because I get about 150 to 200 attacks a day from people trying to break into the website, mainly coming from Russia, China,